Cold open tonight, no opening credits. We begin the show tonight with the discussion about the incident last Saturday, the attempted assassination of President Trump. I was with our first guest in a meeting and we got a chance to see this incident unfold in real time. Eugene Collins, a community leader here, and you and I were in the midst of a conversation and I saw a monitor over your shoulder and just kind of stopped, and I stood up and then you saw my reaction and you stood up on instinct, and then we watched that whole thing unfold, man. Not one of our brightest days.
No, it wasn't, right? And I think even at the time we were talking politics, right?
Yeah,
we were talking politics, and then you look up and there's guns, noises, at a presidential rally, which is wild.
Yeah, and because I caught the clip as it aired on whatever network they had on, and at first when he grabbed his head and dropped, I stood up because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I know they didn't just kill this man.
You initially thought he was dead.
Yeah. And so then he pops up and he's fist pumping and the whole thing. And you and I were talking about how bad it was. Mm-hmm. And we didn't mean it as a political reflection one way or the other. For both of us, in general, it's like, yeah, this is not good.
No, man, sometimes I think people will see me and they've seen some of the stances I've taken over the years. But you know me, Clay, I believe in democracy, right? And I believe in the concept of it, and I think that's one of the things that makes this country a great country to live in.
Yeah.
At the same time, you would think that some things in 2024 just wouldn't still be a part of our democracy.
Right.
I mean, without all the technology, you would have thought you were watching something from the 1800s.
That's exactly right.
You just don't think things like that are still possible in this country, no matter who they're trying to shoot.
So there's so much to unpack in what you said. First of all, he's 20 years old.
Yeah.
How are you that mad at 20 years old?
And it's divisive politics.
Yeah.
And it's so dangerous, Clay, when you look at it. We'll get out and we'll push some issues, not understanding that there's somebody sitting at home without the capacity to really break these things down in a constructive manner. Mm-hmm. And then you see events like this, right? Mm-hmm. And you'll see the rhetoric say, well, Trump pushed this, right? With some of the terms and some of the things that he's said over the years. But to be honest, you could probably look on both sides.
You can
and
absolutely
see it, right?
look on both sides.
Yeah, you can look on both
absolutely,
sides.
I hold both sides responsible for this because both sides have participated in uncalled for rhetoric, whether you have a member of Congress talking about the eyelashes of a colleague in a live hearing in committee, or some of the other language that's been used. You can pick people from both sides. And that's the part that's laughable, that either side blames the other when both sides have traded in this kind of nonsense.
It's like my grandmother used to always say, you wouldn't see this happen at the church meeting. And it's kind of like our world has taken a step back, just having class.
Man, when you pay attention to the way people dialogue on social media, I'm rapidly unfollowing people with that garbage.
Yeah.
And just any disagreement, the volume goes from 0 to maximum without any regard for understanding. Me understanding your point, you understanding my point, and it just keeps happening. And the hope is this is an anomaly. Because we really don't need this as a society.
We don't, Clay, and I'm gonna say this, and this might not be all the way politically correct, right? I think this social media culture is killing us, right? And it's taking away,
almost literally.
It's taken away from some of the civility that used to exist when you had to do stuff face to face.
Yeah.
Because Clay, you couldn't go in every meeting and say everything, because there was an adage that, hey, I might get punched in the mouth if I say that, right?
Right.
But being able to sit at home and do those type of things on your cell phone and computer, I think it's killing us as a country.
There are people who live to do that, who start a fire on social media and then stand back and watch all the chaos. And they get so much value from hurting other people because they're so empty themselves. And my thing is, we as a country, we as a state, we as a city have to be more inclined to be about results and becoming better, and not just scoring rhetorical points.
Yeah.
Because it's not helping anybody.
It's not. And no way do you ever wish harm on anybody, right?
Nope.
But I think, former President Trump, he's got to take some responsibility in this, and he's got to start to have a different message, because, man, you're inspiring good and bad on both sides, and it's the same with the Democrats, right? But, like, there's just some things that we shouldn't see from the leaders of our country.
You should look up to them as the example of being a statesman or a stateswoman, as opposed to this garbage we see now, and it's really bad. Well, brother, I appreciate the time sitting and talking with you about it. Like I said, we literally were together as this whole thing unfolded and had the same reaction. And on the other side of a couple things, I'm going to have you back because I want to talk about the politics stuff that's about to unfold here. It's getting interesting, isn't it?
It's getting wild, Clay. And let me tell you, I've decided to jump into the fold there too. I'm going to be seeking the Metro Council District 2. That's been being vacated by Councilwoman Shauna Banks.
So up in Scotlandville.
Yeah, up in Scotlandville. Yeah.
Okay, so there we go. Candidate for Metro Council. Breaking a little news here, Eugene Collins. So I definitely will have you back.
Please do.
All right, up next, let's talk about some of these new laws that are going into effect, or that have gone into effect in Louisiana. We'll do that next. Well, as many of you know, there are a series of laws that went into effect a couple of weeks ago in Louisiana, and I've got attorney Ryan Bollier here, who's one of the brightest legal minds in the capital region, and let's talk a little bit about it. Let's jump right in. So there is a new death penalty law here in Louisiana by virtue of what the legislature and the governor have done. Tell us about that.
So essentially what they have done is added some new chemicals that I think that they were unable to get other chemicals that led to the death penalty. I haven't seen Louisiana do a death penalty case in a very long time, but the governor did add two new chemicals that I believe will, I guess, assist in that. I'm gonna tell you, man, I don't know how to really feel about it, but what I'll say is that that is going to be interesting to see how that rolls out.
Well, a lot of these, and that which leads us to one of the other laws, and that's the new concealed carry process in Louisiana now, that people can carry without having a permit.
Yeah, so I'm gonna tell you what's interesting about that, Clay. A lot of our laws, they have some ambiguity to it, right? Some ambiguity to it. There's some gray area. The biggest thing about this law that I think brings me a little concern is one phrase, it's a law-abiding citizen, right? What does that mean? What is the definition of that? How is that going to be carried out? And it's going to be left up to courts. Is it left up to the individual officer? If you approach me and I'm outside of a building that purports to be loitering, am I still a law-abiding citizen? If I have my gun on me, right, but I'm not a felon, I can legally carry, am I still a law-abiding citizen? So I think the gray area that this law kind of has to me, and I'm not the only one that kind of feels this, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that law rolls out, how judges perceive that law, how officers enforce that law. It's going to be really interesting to me.
You know, the new law, or as it relates to concealed carry, allows people to have a weapon on them in a restaurant. You still can't take it into a bar, but in a restaurant that has a bar area that sells alcohol, unless otherwise prohibited by the business, you can walk in carrying that.
And that's what's going to be interesting. I think you're going to see an uptick in a lot of these different businesses and owners putting those signs out there, right? Like, listen, you can't come in here with a concealed carry weapon. Not only because it's serving alcohol, just because it's a safety measure. You know, and I think that it's going to be interesting to see how the public interprets this law, right? Because certain things that may be able to be worked out with a simple conversation may not always end that way anymore.
No, 11:30 on a Friday night at one of these places, inside guys get into an argument, somebody pulls a gun, somebody else is going to pull a gun, and then you can have all kinds of tragedy. And look, and I'm not against guns or anything, but I'm definitely not into people being reckless with them either.
I'm the same way. Look, I believe in our amendment, I believe in our right to bear arms, but I also believe in us being a community, you know what I'm saying? And I think that it's really going to be interesting to see how people interpret this law and use it, you know?
Now, what about the new registry for people who have been convicted of abuse or neglect of a child?
So, in reading that law, it seems like you said, they're going to start a new registry, right? And it's for people who are convicted of certain felonies of a minor, and that's a person, and it's interesting now, watch this. The definition of minor is not a person that has attained the age of 18 in this particular matter. It's anyone who's under the age of 16.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different, right? And if you are convicted of certain felony offenses and that person is under the age of 16, you will have to register.
We'll take one of them out of order since you said that. Now the new designation of adult has been changed.
Yes.
So at 17, where you may have been considered a minor, depending on what you do, you can be dealt with like an adult.
Yes.
So how does that work?
So I think the way that will work is there are certain crimes that if you're committed that can be either transferred from typically from juvenile court, right? But now that the new age is 17, if you're 17, you're no longer technically a juvenile, right? And you can be tried as an adult for your crimes. And I think that that's going to be a large impact on our youth.
And that is specifically to some of the young shooters that are out there.
Yes.
Which leads me to the final one, and that is it. If you get convicted, Louisiana will fall in line with federal guidelines. You're going to do 85% of that time.
Yeah, you will. It doesn't matter if it's a misdemeanor. It doesn't matter if it's a felony. Before, there were different provisions, right, that were outlined that you can serve different percentages or smaller percentages for certain crimes, crimes that were non-crime of violences, obviously, and also misdemeanors. Now, it's across the board. Everyone will serve 85% of whatever time they're adjudicated by the court.
Great job as always, brother.
Thank you,
Ryan
man. I really
Bollier.
appreciate
Up next, Adonica Duggan is here to talk about this school board stuff that's going on. We'll do that next.
Thank you.
Well, if you haven't been able to find any really good dramas on Netflix, maybe you ought to spend some time watching school board meetings, because it's better than anything I've seen on free or paid television. Adonica Duggan with the Baton Rouge Alliance for Students is here, and not much going on in the education space here, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's better than anything that we've seen. Certainly not for the community and for the
Well,
kids of this community.
I think you're
right?
absolutely right. And as we record the interview, the last candidate left in the race has since pulled her name out of it, and it leaves no candidates. So where are we with this? Because you had 4 board members release a statement saying why they would not back Adam Smith. The last candidate, Ms. Seahas, got out of it. She didn't receive a single vote. Kevin George earlier this week got out. He's going to stay at LSU and U High. Where are we?
You know, we're just ahead of the start of school, and we're in a really tough situation for our community, and I hope that the leaders of this board can come together to find a path forward.
Do you think that's possible?
I think that that's what they were elected to do, and I think that that's the charge, right? They are the adults in this situation who have to come together and figure out a path forward and how they find consensus. And frankly, you know, we had some really talented people apply for this role. You had 17 applicants, a number of them were very quality people, and I think that to say that they can't find anyone among those 17 to agree on is really sad, right?
And, you know, which begs the question for someone who doesn't pay attention to the politics and may not have kids in the school system, how do we get here?
I think that, you know, I could name a lot of challenges around this process. I think first is there was an agreement among the board about what they were going out looking for.
Okay.
So if we're building a house and you have one idea of a house in your mind and I have one idea of a house in my mind, and we haven't ever aligned on what that house is going to look like, we start building completely different houses. And I think that that's what happened with this process. I think the board members weren't really honest about what their values were in the superintendent. They didn't put their cards on the table about what they could and could not live with. And now we're at this moment where we find ourselves at an impasse, and you know, clock is ticking. Adam Smith is the interim. He can only be interim till July 23rd.
Yeah.
And beyond that, they will be in violation of state law. And so you have to find a path forward and you have to move on.
So then what happens if they're in violation of state law? Is it a case of the state coming in and taking over the district?
Well, the law is silent on what happens when they're in that violation, so I think we may be in a situation where we find out what happens next. I certainly think that the state superintendent lives in Baton Rouge and you know, cares about what's happening in the second largest school district in the state, and so I can't imagine that we're going to sit in this limbo space for very long. But the law is silent on what happens next.
But so if the law says you cannot extend Adam Smith, if you restart the process, does that mean you've got to choose someone else within the district or within the region to be your interim?
You would, in my mind, you would have to choose someone else.
Okay.
I don't know that the board would be willing to find someone that they could come to consensus on for that someone else, because if they could come to consensus on someone, they would have a superintendent.
Right now.
So I think we're very likely in a situation where we'll find ourselves in violation of the law next week.
What about the shade thrown in your direction? You've been involved in the education space a long time. I know how passionate you are about children in the school system here. What about the shade thrown in your direction?
You know, I think it's difficult. Certainly, no one wants to, you know, experience that. But I think the focus is not on me. I'm one person in this city. We lead one organization in this city. We have 40,000 kids in this city that 9 people have to find agreement on how they're going to serve. And I think it's difficult to be the villain in this situation. You know, everybody wants a boogeyman. But the reality of the situation is we have people who can't work with their colleagues to find agreement on both sides. They have to be able to work together and come to a place of compromise. And, you know, that means that, you know, we're in compromise. You don't get everything that you want and I don't get everything that I want. And we have to find somewhere in the middle that we can land. And I think that's the charge of this board. You know, it's unfortunate that we are the issue here, but the reality is these are the people who are elected to sit in these seats.
Yeah.
And they have to work together to find a solution for our kids, because that's what we're all as a city counting on them to do.
I'm just thinking, if you reopen the process, if you are either one of the 17 or someone who would have considered coming here, the last 3 months probably doesn't make this an attractive job.
No. I mean, I think that last Thursday night was an embarrassment to the city.
Yeah.
It was an embarrassment to the school board.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't do the thing that our organization is very, you know, focused on, which is improving public confidence in public education. I think it's very important that our city has confidence in our public education system to serve the interests of our kids. And last Thursday night did not move us in that direction at all.
I don't think people realize this is a $700+ million a year behemoth that is supposed to serve kids. And the thing that I have not heard people talk about a lot in the last few weeks is kid, student, child, children. It's just grown people stuff.
It is. It is. And frankly, it's grown people stuff. And the reality is this is political. They are elected officials, and so that there is difficulty in that. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think they are all people. Not a person on that dais who doesn't show up to serve kids.
Yeah.
And they have to lay aside all of the differences that they have as adults and focus on what brought them to those seats in the first place.
Depending on what happens on the 23rd, next Tuesday, I might have you come back here again.
We're making this a habit.
Oh my God. Let's talk about something positive in the education space. Helix Academy, and we will do that next. There's a whole lot going on in the education space here, as you know, but this is one discussion that you're going to enjoy because it's one of my favorite things to talk about, and that's the Helix Academy portfolio, specifically aviation. So now there are 2 campuses, and we'll get into that with Dr. Sharita Sellers and Colonel Jerry Brandon. And let's talk about Helix. For people who don't know, what is Helix Academy?
Helix Aviation Academy, well, first of all, is the first K-12 aviation academy in the country, located on a regional airport. But now we have another location on 7701 Plank Road. So we have 3 focuses at Helix Aviation Academy: private pilot, drone pilot, and aviation maintenance technician, in which we now have a partnership with BRCC to offer 2 foundational aviation maintenance technician courses to freshman students.
So you're building, and you're the founding principal and executive director, so you're building a pathway to the aviation industry for young people in the school.
Yes.
What was the motivation behind doing this, Colonel?
Well, we have a lot of people that when we talk aviation, they always think about airplanes in the sky. That's the only thing they see, but with this opportunity, our students have a chance to see more than just airplanes in the sky.
Yeah.
They get a chance to see how things work. They get to understand what ground school is all about, the inner workings of an airplane.
Yeah.
We have a pilot on staff, which is amazing.
I saw that.
Yeah, it's amazing to have something like that. And then to be a pipeline to industries like BRCC, into airplane like Delta, American Airlines. We want to be that person or that school that when airlines need someone, they think about Helix Aviation Academy.
I think it's so great, but I don't want to miss what you said earlier. The first of its kind in America.
Correct. So there are other aviation schools. They're typically high school.
Okay.
We're the first one that starts with kindergarten and first grade. So this upcoming year, we are adding our elementary starting with K and 1. We're also adding our high school. So as Colonel Brandon just stated, we've hired a pilot, Ezzy Smith. He is our flight instructor. He also can certify students. And so we have several freshmen this year that will begin ground school at our current aviation academy, which is the one that's located on the airport.
That is the coolest thing. So, and then some of these kids have now been up in airplanes, correct?
Yes, yes.
So I'm sure there are students on your campus who've now flown before their parents have had the chance to fly.
Definitely.
Yes. And you can get your pilot's license before you get your driver's license.
Wait, what?
You can get your pilot's license before you get your driver's license.
Man, come on. So talk about, because I've been there on the campus, the current campus, not the new one yet, but when I'm invited, I'm going. But the energy there is so amazing, and the kids seem so motivated. And the perspective it gives them about education is what excites me. So what are your goals? Obviously, you want kids to go to aviation if they want to, but outside of that, what are your goals?
So when you choose a career in STEM, a STEM field of any type, so even if they're not interested in aviation, of course that is our goal, that's our pathway. STEM is going to develop their problem solving skills. Every job in the 21st century kind of has a target toward cybersecurity, other STEM fields, where our children are able to apply what they've learned in anything they choose to go into. And the reason why I mentioned cyber is because that's another one of our career tracks that we are building out.
Wow. So when you think about reasons to be excited about Baton Rouge, you can think about Helix Academy. So quickly, if a parent is watching this and is saying, hey, I want to get my kid into Helix, what should they do?
They can go to helixaviationacademy.org and they can apply.
There it is,
for
right there,
either
on
kindergarten
the
or
screen.
first grade. We have a full middle school 6th through 8th or 9th grade.
That's awesome. So when am I going to get a chance to come out and see the new campus?
Anytime you want.
All right.
Yeah.
Y'all heard him say
Weekends too.
it. Weekends too?
Yep.
I don't know about that, but definitely during the week we're working out. But listen, so proud of what y'all doing. You're always welcome here to get the word out. Shout out to Michelle who gave me a call about setting this interview up. And anytime you want to come back here, and listen, next time bring some kids.
Yes, yes.
I love that. Let's bring them here. All right. This has been great. Look, if you're watching the stream right now online, you might want to know where can you catch it over the air, where you could watch it on WBXH. Obviously, 7 o'clock on Friday night, 3 o'clock on Saturday. Back in just a moment.